You're listening to the Anthem Award-winning podcast from Rutgers Law School, The Power of Attorney. I'm your host and Dean of the Law School, Joanna Bond. Thanks so much for joining us today, Lloyd. I am fascinated to hear your origin story. It's a question we usually start out with on the podcast, but in your case, I'm particularly interested to hear how you got to where you are today.
It's funny because my origin story kind of foreshadows everything that I'm going to do later in my career, because it's truly a story that is rooted in diversity. So I am born and raised in Kansas City. And if you know anything about Kansas City, you know that there are two Kansas Cities. There is a Kansas City on the Kansas side, and then there is the Missouri side, which is where the Chiefs and the Royals play, etc. I am from a bit more of the rural side, which is the Kansas side. So as you can already imagine with me describing it in that fashion, not the most diverse, Joanna. So I was very much so in a quest for finding a more diverse place for me to, kind of come of age as I was graduating from high school. And I really wanted to major in international business. And I thought, well, number one, what's the furthest place I can go from Kansas City?
Right. You ended up pretty far away.
Right. Where I could also, of course, study international business. And I thought the nation's capital was just the perfect location. And truth be told, I don't know how many people know this story, I actually was so set on going to Georgetown. That is where I wanted to go.
Okay.
But, we are talking about coming from a family where, there were not many people who have gone to college before. My parents were not college graduates. And so I was kind of figuring this thing out myself. So I had no idea what early action meant. Stay with me. Had no idea what it was. And I completed the application to Howard via early action.
Okay.
This was back in the day when you applied via paper, and I got this huge package in the mail on Christmas Eve during my senior year of high school, which accepted me into Howard, but also came with this full tuition scholarship. And so I said, well, sorry, Georgetown, I guess we're going to Howard.
Fantastic. I love it. That's great.
That's without me really knowing about like the rich history of Howard University or any of that. And so I am just so blessed that, kind of by happenstance, I ended up getting into Howard and got that wonderful scholarship offer. But yeah, that's how I got from Kansas City over to the East Coast.
That's a great story. And I love that, you were trying to get as far away from Kansas City as you can.
Oh,
I
yeah.
can relate to that.
Oh, yeah.
And that you landed at Howard. That's fantastic. So Howard is obviously an HBCU. I'm not sure all of our listeners understand or know about the history and importance and continued relevance of HBCUs. So could you talk just a little bit about that?
Yes, HBCU, historically Black college or university. And it's funny because I initially got exposure to HBCUs because I was in the band. And if you know a lot about some of the culture at an HBCU, the bands are kind of the main event, when you go to like the football games or things like that. So the little bit I had researched about HBCUs, I knew that I wanted to be a part of the HBCU band and get that experience. And so historically Black colleges were formed right after the Civil War. So you're in the Reconstruction era. And now, of course, you have all of the recently freed, Black Americans, and they're looking for ways, of course, to be able to enter into the workforce. But that includes, of course, having to go and attain an education. And so these back then, just these Black colleges and universities, they weren't quite historical yet. They were formed around the country to provide that for those recently freed Black Americans. And Howard University, founded in 1867 in DC, was just that. And what has been so amazing about Howard is that it has produced so many prominent Black Americans and all of the HBCUs. Of course, when I talked about that rich culture and the history of these institutions, they have truly produced, a lot of that Black excellence that we have been exposed to today. Probably most importantly for the time in which we're recording this podcast, the presidential nominee, Kamala Harris. She is a graduate of Howard University. And what is so great, and I think that you also asked about not just what are they, but kind of why are they still so relevant, considering now we are so far away from, the 1860s. Well, they're still so relevant because you do still have people like Lloyd, right? Who did not get that experience to really be immersed in that the culture of being black, and that's as someone who grew up black, had black parents, etc. But to go there, it really steeped me in the many different dimensions of blackness. And truly, I got a chance to learn about the Black diaspora. That's the first time that I met people who were from the continent of Africa. That's the first time that I met, people who, looked like me, who were from Trinidad and, from other places in the Caribbean or from, Europe. And it was just so eye opening. And it has been so amazing, as you have your college experience, as we all do, right? I am just able to be able look back upon my college years. Number one, like I said, it was those formative years where I got to learn a lot about what it means to be black. But it also was this wonderful affirming experience because when they ask you on the first day of school to look to your left and look to your right, there were people who looked like me. There were underrepresented people, in America, but at Howard, for this one moment in time, we were the majority. And if you scroll through my phone, doctors, lawyers, engineers, accountants, you name it, I have them, and they all look like me. And so that is just, I don't know, it is such a fulfilling and rich experience. I met my wife at Howard,
Oh, that's
has
great.
just been a huge part of making me who I am today.
That is amazing. Well, thank you for that explanation.
Yeah.
So I have to ask, what did you play in the band?
So I know how to play every woodwind instrument. Actually, I
That's
started
great.
with the clarinet. I learned how to play the oboe. I can play the flute. I can play the saxophone. You name it. And so now I am. I don't know, kind of like the Berry Gordy of my household because the kids are now in school and they are not necessarily signing up for band and orchestra, but dear old dad is signing them up. So yeah,
Right. Good for you. That's great. While you still have some leverage over them, that's good.
I do.
Oh, that's fantastic. Well, I'm delighted to hear what an impact going to Howard had on you and shaping your experiences and shaping you into the incredibly impressive lawyer that you are today.
Thank you.
So after studying business, I know you studied international business and marketing at Howard. After that, why law school? Why did you decide to go to law school, and why Rutgers in particular?
Oh my gosh. Now, this is a funny story. Now, this is a funny story. So, law school was not in the cards. And truly, if you ask my wife, she was the one who wanted to go to law school, and I wanted to go into business. In some kind of way, we kind of swapped there over time. But as the story goes, I was trying to get, of course, a job, and I wanted to do this. I wanted to do global marketing, but you don't come right out of undergrad, joining the marketing team for McDonald's or something like that, right?
Right,
You got to like
right,
work your way up. And I said, oh no, well, that's not what I want to do. And at the time, just given, the economy, et cetera, there were so many of the big banks who were coming to Howard to recruit people to start their career in finance. And I'll be very honest, I heard that you could earn a lot of money working in finance for those
right,
big investment
right.
banks. And I accepted a job. And so I went for a shadow day. And so they flew me out. I did a day in the life. And of course, I had to miss a couple of days of school. And that is when I realized, Joanna, that I can't really count past 10. And so I said, yeah, I don't know if a career in finance is going to be as lucrative for me as I thought.
Wow. Well, it's great that you figured it out at that point and not
That's right.
2 years in.
That's right.
That's
That's
great.
right. And so, again, kind of going through this entire experience without really having the proper mentorship, et cetera, huge no, right? I then went back and rescinded my acceptance of the job without having a backup plan. I had no alternative. And I said, I'm not going to do this. And when I got back to Howard, I had missed my business law course while I was out of town. And my business law professor was asking me, of course, how was the visit to the bank? And I said, it was terrible. And I ended up turning down the job. And so he says, well, what are you going to do now? And I kind of stared at him, and I said, I actually have no clue. And he says, well, you're doing fantastic in my business law course. Why don't you think about, going to law school? And I said, yeah, but I don't really know anything about law school. I don't know any lawyers, that just, we're halfway through senior year. I don't know. And he
Right.
kind of looks back at me with this stare like, do you think I just fell out of a coconut tree? Like, of course, I'm a lawyer, and that's how I'm teaching business law. And so he was able to truly hold my hand through the entire law school, application process and told me about the LSAT. I had to teach myself the LSAT and apply to law schools before I got the score because I was so late in the game. Oh my God. Any
Right.
prospective law students, do not ever follow this as a path.
Don't do it that way. Don't.
Well,
It
do not
worked
do
out
it this
well
way.
for Lloyd, but
Yeah,
don't do it
yeah.
that way.
This is a one in a million. Do not do this. Do not advise. I did great on the LSAT, and I was actually headed to Vanderbilt Law School.
Oh,
Got into a great law
fantastic.
school. I was already in Tennessee, and late in the game, I got an email from the admissions team at Rutgers, and it just kind of gave one of those info packets. I know because I'd registered for the law school data service or whatnot, so they had my information, and so they were urging me to apply to Rutgers Law School, and I replied back, and kind of. Feeling myself at the time, I was like, "Oh no, I've gotten into this great law school and I'm already settled. Like I'm totally fine."
Right.
And the admissions team asked me. They said, "Well, what are they offering you at this other law school? Are you sure that you want to spend your next 3 years there?" And I said, "Well, they're offering me nothing. I was very late in the game." And they said, "Well, you've got some pretty impressive credentials. Like we could potentially give you this if you come to Rutgers." And I said, "I'll be there tomorrow." And
That's fantastic. I love that you follow your gut. That's great. I mean,
followed my gut, was on the
yep.
first thing smoking to Camden, sight unseen, had never visited Rutgers. I had stopped in New Jersey before to get gas because it's full service, but that was probably the only reason why I'd ever been in New Jersey. But that is what got me here. I was going to be in the South, and I totally made a pivot. Again, which
Right.
is such foreshadowing about my entire story, but that's how I got to Rutgers.
There's something that's really valuable and intangible about that ability to pivot and follow your gut, and it sounds like you did that with respect to the bank job and with respect to law school too, and you landed. I'm biased, but you landed in a phenomenal place. Rutgers Law School is really exceptional. So I want to hear a little bit more about that part of your journey. What would you say is the most important thing you learned at Rutgers Law while you were there?
Let me start by saying Rutgers, choosing to come to Rutgers and making that pivot, one of the best decisions that a 21-year-old could have made at the time. Rutgers has given so much to me and taught me so much, and I'm not saying that because, of course, I understand the present company. I am saying that because that is the honest to God truth. And if we're talking about one of the most important things that I learned at Rutgers, I am not going to talk about the rule against perpetuities, but I'm going to talk about some of the life lessons. And for me, I think about the importance of building a personal brand. And I don't know that there was ever explicitly, taught to me, but it was the way in which, I was kind of thrown into, this legal profession. And, I didn't have lawyers in my family, like I explained earlier. I did not have mentors who were lawyers. So I knew nothing about what it meant to be, to become a lawyer, how to be a successful law student. But what I did know was that if I made the connections, that people could show me the ropes, and you were not going to make those connections if you didn't have a good personal brand. And so it was the folks at Rutgers who gave me so many amazing opportunities to be able to shape, my personal brand that I have today. They gave me leadership experience, through the Black Law Students Association. I was the president of BALSA when I was there. I was on the executive board of the Student Bar Association. I just really got this chance to create a name for myself in the legal community. And Rutgers really taught me that the importance of that. And that's funny because if you really go into kind of the biggest benefit I got from Rutgers, it was through connections that were made via that scholarship that got me to Rutgers. It was backed by my former law firm. And I just happened to want to make a connection with that law firm, wanted to send them a thank you note. And I was told that you're one of the first people who's ever sent us a thank you email, for the
Wow.
scholarship.
That's extraordinary. I mean, kudos to you for recognizing that that's the right thing to do,
Yeah,
and
yeah,
great manners. Kudos to your
yeah,
parents too
right,
for bringing you up right.
right.
But that's phenomenal. And I think you're right. Life is like that. It's just full of these doors that you don't even realize are opening by something as simple as sending a thank you note. But that's a
Yes,
great life lesson.
huge door opened for me.
Amazing. That's great. And so tell me what happened after law school?
Sure. So when I sent that thank you email, I started to really get some amazing mentorship and tutelage from the folks at my former firm. They invited me, and that was the first time I took a tour of a law firm. And really had some lawyers' names in my phone, and I just owe them a great deal of gratitude, not only for the scholarship, but also again just for that mentorship and that exposure, and turned into a summer associate position for my 2L year, which, as we all know, if that goes successfully, that turns into a full time job offer. And I started my career in New Jersey. I took the New Jersey and Pennsylvania bar exams. But again, back to those connections, there were so many Rutgers alumni who were at my prior firm. And so I can just count among them. You think about all those, pivotal things that happen in your 20s, right? And
Right.
particularly, when you're young and coming up the ranks at a law firm, the people who gave me first trial experience, the people who nominated me for awards and pushed me out to do community leadership, the people who were at my wedding. There were so many of them who not only were they from my firm and they were great mentors, et cetera, but they were Rutgers alumni. And so there are just so many of them who have poured into me. Again, the education was great that I got from Rutgers. I mean, let's just assume that that's a
Right.
given, right? But it was
Right.
truly those connections and that community that I got from Rutgers that just set me up for everything after Rutgers Law School, truly.
The community is really special, and the alums feel a real sense of connection to each other and to the
Yes.
institution, which is wonderful.
And for a transplant like me, I mean, that was so important, right? Because I didn't have any family in New Jersey.
Right.
Truly, after we graduated from Howard, my wife took a job in Pittsburgh. So, it was literally just me. And I went from when I moved to New Jersey, not knowing a soul to, having this amazing network. So, X number of years later, I don't think we have to divulge how many, but X number of years later, having this amazing, amazing network. And so it all comes back. All signs point back to Rutgers as being truly the catalyst for all of that.
That's wonderful. Can you explain for me and for our listeners what your current role is at Buchanan Ingersoll and Rooney? I know it's Chief Diversity and Inclusion Officer, but if
Yes.
you can talk a little bit more about what that looks like on a day to day basis, that would be great.
Well, number one, it's a pivot, right? Because I did practice law for about 14 or 15 years. I was a partner, a litigator at that same law firm. And I made a pivot in the year 2020. I was in a hybrid role in my prior firm, uh, i.e., I was practicing law and I was the chief diversity officer. And I started, again, you think about the climate in the year 2020. I started to think about, number one, I wasn't doing either of them at 100%. And, as you can probably glean by way of my personality, if I'm not going to be the best at it, I don't want to do it. And I'd already done the litigation thing. I'd done the partnership thing. I'd achieved so many of those goals. And I really wanted to know what kind of an impact I could make through submerging myself into DEI work. And so that's when I found my current role at Buchanan. And yes, so it is a chief level role. I am the first full time chief diversity and inclusion officer. I had some predecessors, but they were in a hybrid function, like I was in my prior firm. But I am a member of the firm's leadership team. I report directly to the CEO, and truly, I am, I would say, an advisor to the CEO. But it is so hard to kind of in one summation here, kind of talk about what my current role entails because it's so multifaceted. Overall, I would say that the goal of my role is to ensure that diversity, equity, and inclusion is a part of all of our business functions at the firm. And so that's in, HR and recruiting, that's in marketing and business development, it's in our operations, that it's even a part of our financial conversations, right? Truly, every day is different. I can give you some examples. You think about the way in which I partner because this is very much so a cross-functional role, and so you think about the way in which I partner with HR and recruiting. I talked about them first. It's about really infusing some level of intentionality behind our recruiting and making sure there's a recruiting strategy, but that recruiting strategy, of course, has an emphasis on recruiting and eventually, of course, retaining and promoting diverse talent. And so, what does that mean? That means we have to make sure that we are partnering with groups like that Black Law Students Association we were talking about, right? That means that, there are bar associations that we should be active and have a presence in, like the Hispanic Bar Association, places where we know that we can find some of that underrepresented talent. But again, I want to make sure that we are very, very clear. I am chief diversity and inclusion officer for everyone in my firm. So it's not only for the women, it's not only for the Black and brown or LGBT, it is for everyone. And so it's truly ensuring that there is diversity across all different dimensions of diversity. It's not for one particular group. But I mean, oh my gosh, everything, Joanna, from pay equity audits to I'm on the promotions committee. I have my own podcast, talk about D&I issues. We ensure that everyone is seen at the firm, and so I truly do underscore that inclusion piece and making sure that all of our employees have some level of visibility and a voice within the firm. And when I say all employees, I truly am literal when I talk about inclusion. I am even down to all of the business professionals, who are in the firm, not just the attorneys. It's for everyone, the people who support them, paralegals and their secretaries, et cetera. And we do that through our affinity groups. And so basically the lawyer version of all of the BALSA and, the outlaw group and things like that, that you may have at the law school. Lastly, I also engage with clients. I very much so still do marketing and business development, which, was certainly a part of practicing law that I loved. And I just infused it with, my D&I work. And so it's truly about understanding that our clients very much so want to advance diversity and inclusion, and so does the firm. And so, how can we partner to make sure that we're both being able to achieve those goals? And so, making sure that we staff our matters with a diverse group of practitioners, making sure that that we're giving origination credit and that that's an equitable allocation there, that we're giving reach assignments, to people in a fair manner across the board. We even do this mini secondment program that we send our summer associates out to go and work with our clients for a short period of time, and so that all comes through D&I. So there's so many different parts of the job, and I love it so very much. I truly do. I would say that when people ask me, "Oh, what do you do?" I say, "You know what? I get in everybody's business, and I get paid for it." That is truly that is
That
truly what I do
summarizes it,
for a
huh?
living.
Well, it's so wonderful that the firm has invested in this really
Yes,
important work, and they had the wisdom to put you at the helm. I mean, it really is truly remarkable work that you're doing. So
thank you,
I applaud you for that.
thank you.
Let me just ask you a quick follow-up.
Okay.
What's your favorite part of the job? We heard about a lot of the different aspects of the job, but you must have a favorite.
I would say the favorite part of doing D&I work for me are the policy changes. And so, not putting on programs or any kind of discrete, workshop or some educational piece, because again, that's so ephemeral, right? You don't have an idea how long it's going to stick. But what's important to certainly a law firm, but any organization are the things that they ultimately write down. And so those policy changes and to really see the sustainability of D&I work, truly embedding it in the way in which we do business, that is what truly pleases me. I think about giving some of that power to our employees and hearing from them what's important, and then turning it into policy. Things like our gender neutral restroom policy. And making sure that we have them, across the board with our firm. It's a part of the due diligence now. If we're looking to open up a new office or we're looking to do renovations, you better believe that, that CDIO is going to come and get into your business, right? And I'm ensuring that we're following that policy to ensure that we have gender neutral restrooms. If we're going to do a retreat, we have to make sure that that event space has gender neutral restrooms. And just to hear and to see the faces of people who, how much this means to an individual, again, for them to be seen, for them to know that, something that's so important to them is now a part of the way in which we do business. It's just amazing. Floating holidays, so that people can take off, for whatever it is important, Rosh Hashanah or for Good Friday or, whatever it is, you name it, we do those floating holidays. And those are new policies and things like that that we've introduced through the D&I department.
Lloyd, I know that DEI has come under more scrutiny in the aftermath of the Supreme Court's college admissions decision in 2023. And I know that the fallout has been expansive. Can you talk a little bit about what kind of pivots you've had to make, if any, in the wake of that decision and in the wake of the criticism that DEI has come under recently, and this idea that it is somehow no longer necessary?
Hmm. Has D&I come under more scrutiny since 2023? Yes. Has D&I been more heavily criticized since 2023? Yes. Is it still necessary? Yes. And is it still lawful? Yes. And so as a result of that, and that is where I truly believe that, for me to be in a position like this where I do have my, legal education and background, and to be able to infuse that into my D&I work, I bring this very unique vantage point because I get a chance to present to our board of directors and talk about, any kind of potential risks to any D&I programs. And we were doing this long before the SFFA decision, but I have to tell you that there has been no pivot for us. And that
Good.
is because our D&I programs and initiatives were always open to everyone. I talked about that at the, beginning of the conversation, and how I'm the CDIO for everyone. There are not specific opportunities and programs that are exclusive to, this one particular group, or, again, even down to positions within the firm. I'm inclusive of, our business professionals as well as our attorneys. So, that's truly the scrutiny. Whether or not the programs are open to everyone, and do they benefit everyone, and ours always have, since I got to the firm. At least I can tell you that the strategic plan that I have for advancing D&I within our firm and within the profession and the community has always been about including everyone. And so we're continuing with that exact same framework. We're continuing with all of our D&I initiatives. Again, it is still lawful. It's under more scrutiny, but it's always been open to everyone. And so we know that in effectuating a D&I program, ensuring that it is open to everyone and benefits everyone, that's not only a good thing, but that is the lawful thing to do.
Right. That's fantastic. That's so good to hear.
Yeah.
And I know you've been very involved as an alum. In 2023, you spoke at the Rites of Passage ceremony for Rutgers Camden graduates of color, and
Yes.
you encouraged them to quote unquote manage their invisibility. Can you talk a little bit about what that means?
Yeah, for me, in talking about your, oftentimes it has been deemed as your visible invisibility, where, you see yourself, but there are many people who do not see you. And again, that's not about being a person of color in the legal profession. Again, given whatever dimension of diversity, it could be someone, with a disability. It could be a woman. It could be someone who identifies as LGBTQ, and so maybe you see me or some shell of myself, but you don't really understand who I am. You don't know exactly what it feels like to be me, to be the only person who looks like or identifies like me, in a room, or to be the first person in my family, to ever go off and venture into this particular profession. And so managing that is really a matter of making sure that people don't fall victim to imposter syndrome. And the
Hmm.
best way to really mitigate that and to eventually overcome it, and what I advise the graduates, is through continued self affirmations. Because if you look at many media portrayals of underrepresented individuals, or oftentimes women as well, you name it, the media doesn't portray them as the successful people I saw that morning, in caps and gowns, and getting degrees in Camden, no less, right?
Right.
And so that for me was just kind of the first affirmation. Statistics may say that perhaps you're not supposed to be here, but you're here, and so you need to really make sure that you are living in the moment, and that you really do understand that you belong here. You earned it. You didn't get here by any level of luck and happenstance. This is because of the hard work you put in. And so I wanted them all to know that I see you, and so you're not necessarily invisible. Certainly not to me, as the keynote that day. I wanted them to know that I see you, and so continue that level of affirmations every day.
Wonderful, wonderful words of wisdom. Thanks for that, Lloyd.
Sure, sure.
Speaking of Rutgers,
Hmm.
you were the first African American chancellor and one of the youngest to lead the Rutgers Law Camden Alumni Association.
Yes,
You've taught CLE classes here. Thank you very much for that.
yes.
And you're active in connecting with students. Why is it important for you, from a personal perspective, to stay connected?
Well, and I also have to make sure that I mention, because my former students would certainly feel slighted, but I've taught at the law school, and so I taught the diversity in the law course last
Right.
year. And so,
Right.
yes, I
We're
have
so
been
grateful to have you in the
so
classroom too.
I've
I'm
been
glad you
so
mentioned that.
connected. Thank you, thank you. But it is truly because, again, I just feel like Rutgers poured so much into me. Rutgers gave me so much. Rutgers taught me so much outside of the classroom as well. And I'm very much so someone who just lives by, to whom much is given, much is required. And I know that I am not alone in being, the 21-year-old that I was, graduating from undergrad and going straight into law school and not having the slightest idea, what it's going to be like to enter into this profession, or, not knowing what's a plaintiff versus what is a defendant, or what a law firm looks like, or what the different areas of law are. And I also know what it's like to not necessarily have that representation, for someone to really personify what it is to see a reflection of yourself in a successful position or in the front of the room. And so that's why I do love to go back and kind of see the future of the profession. It really just warms my heart, not only as an alum, but also as someone who's a D&I practitioner, to see that the future of our profession, it is diverse, and that it is continuing, and that, they do need, again, some of those affirmations. And sometimes it's not a matter of saying anything. It's a matter of just looking with your eyes and saying, wow, we have a woman who's the dean of the law school. I'm a woman. So, whoa, I can do that with my JD, oh my gosh, look at him. He's black and he made it to partner at a law firm, and now he's in the C-suite at a law firm. I mean, I could do that with my JD. That is just so extremely powerful. And I know for a fact that it plants the seeds for what eventually become these amazing success stories from these Rutgers graduates.
Well, I know you're having a huge impact on our students. So thank you again
No,
for all of the ways in which you inspire our
thank
students.
you. My pleasure.
Your efforts on inclusivity, I know, extend beyond the legal realm. And in fact, you founded and have chaired for several years
Yeah.
the Burlington Camden Achievement Foundation, which is a scholarship and mentoring program to prepare high school males of color for college and beyond. And more than 120 young men have completed the program and have been awarded over $155,000 in scholarships. Why is it important to give back and reach out even from before college?
Well, because if you really go and try to do a root cause analysis, right? You can say, oh, we don't really necessarily have a lot of diversity in the legal profession, or you can say it about engineering, or insert profession here, right? There's a question that precedes that, and that is, all right, well, why? Well, then you could say, well, there's not that much diversity in law schools. They could stand to use some more diversity. Okay, well, why? Well, maybe that's because of the LSAT. All right, well, why? Maybe it's the college preparation. And so you keep going back and back and back until you get to something like, the great equalizers, right? Which is the K through 12. And so everyone had those opportunities, right? That's something that we're affording to everyone. But it's what happens after that and the preparation for that next chapter. That is then where you start to see some of the disparities, right? You see some of the amazing schools who have amazing college counselors who prepare those young people for college and subsequent life, and other schools are under resourced, and they don't necessarily have it. And I know that to fill in that gap, you need people who, again, already understand what this story could look like for these individuals, that they don't have, someone who intervenes at that critical moment. And I wanted to be that person. So that program is just it's my heart. And those young men, again, I kind of am using that as a way for me to see a future Lloyd Freeman, right? Someone else who is needs that advice about which school do I go to, and how do I get into college, and who's going to write me a letter of recommendation, and all of those things. And I've never met a lawyer, and just taking them around and having them come to see my office. Some of the young men in the program, I recall taking them to my office. Some of them have never been inside of some of the center city skyscrapers. Were born and raised right on the other side of the river, but had never been inside of some of the buildings we have here in center city Philadelphia. And so it's just that level of exposure. And so you ask me why? Why is it so important? Exposure and representation matters. And I truly believe that if we can start to cure some of that, particularly during some of those formative years, then we can start to cure some of those things that are further down the road. But we've got to make sure that that pipeline and our focus on really ensuring that there's some diversity in that college pipeline, that to me is mission critical.
Absolutely. Well, it's truly transformative work that you're doing.
Thank you.
Um, and this next question
Uh-huh.
I love. You started a Daddy and Me event at the Philadelphia Ballet so that your children and others from underrepresented communities can see and relate to performers who look like them.
Yeah.
And in some ways, this dovetails really nicely with what you've been talking about. But can you talk a little bit more about starting that program?
It does. I have to tell you, I know that a nonprofit board just hates to see me coming because I am not one of those new board members who comes in and sits in the back and says I'm going to just sit back and take notes for the first 90 days. I come right in with my hand raised, and so when I joined the board of the Philadelphia Ballet, and truly because my wife and I love the arts, our daughter is named Ailey after the Alvin Ailey American Dance Theater. That is how much
That's
we
wonderful.
absolutely love dance and the fine and performing arts. And I joined the ballet. And, as I'm hearing, I joined the diversity committee, of course, for the ballet. And I'm hearing about how we really wanted to ensure that the audience and the people who were getting an opportunity to enjoy the ballet continues to be diverse. We're within the city of Philadelphia, which has such amazing, diversity. How do we get that diversity inside of the Academy of Music? And so for me, I said, all right, well, we're basically looking for how can you get people like me, and we're talking about men, we're talking about people of color. How do you get them to come to the ballet? Well, you got to make sure that you have like some cute little kids, and cute little kids will get folks to do anything, Joanna.
That's great. I believe it.
And
I
so
believe it.
my kids had never, again, with us loving the arts so much, my kids still had never actually been to the ballet. They had never been inside of the Academy of Music. And I said, well, why don't we kill two birds with one stone, if you will, and so we can get, more men, we can get more people of color, and we can also get these young people. And again, exposure and representation. Let's get them in here and expose them to the arts. And, maybe there's a future ballerina in the audience who's going to say, oh my gosh, I didn't know that people could do, dance like that. I want to do that when I grow up. And that's going to help us to diversify the stage and diversify, the future of ballet. And so that is where that initiative came from. We do it around the Nutcracker, which, it's widely popular. Everyone knows about the Nutcracker. You've probably read books or seen some sort of a performance on TV, but to go and see, our amazing dancers at the Philadelphia Ballet perform the Nutcracker. It's during the holiday season, and it's just this amazing time. It's super electrifying, and it's this wonderful entree into ballet, into the world of dance, not only for the children, but for many of their dads who come and bring them. And so it's just wonderful to be able to look out across the Academy of Music and see all of these, again, amazing representations of positivity. You've got dads there, of course they know that I am the one who is championing this event. So you got to come dressed to the nines, right? So they come and they've got their suits on, and, particularly
Right.
you see some of the kids and they've got their tutus on and things like that. Joanna,
That's
it
great.
is the absolute best.
That's so wonderful. Well, you are a natural born leader, and I know that Rutgers can't take credit for that, but I am so glad that you joined us for those important years during law school, and that
Me
you're
too.
now actively involved in our alumni community. You're such an asset, and doing such great work out in the world. So it's really a pleasure to have you on the show, and to have you as an alum, and to have you actively engaged. I want to thank you for that.
Thank you. Thank you. No, I owe Rutgers a great deal. So certainly everything that Rutgers has given to me, I am so happy to give back.
Wonderful. Well, thanks again, Lloyd. Take care.
Thank you.
The Power of Attorney is a production of Rutgers Law School. With 2 locations just minutes from New York City and Philadelphia, Rutgers Law offers the prestige and reputation of a large, nationally known university with a personal, small campus experience. Learn more today by visiting us at law.rutgers.edu.